Hello, this is Paul Harris for CGS. Today I'm joined by Fernando Ganosa, CEO of Atico Mining, to talk about his projects in Colombia and Ecuador. If you like these videos, please subscribe below. Morning, Fernando.
Good morning, Paul. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Atico has a couple of properties in Latin America. It has the El Roble copper mine in Colombia and the Plata VMS in Ecuador. So the company seems to be specializing in VMS projects. Can you tell us a little bit about each project, please?
Sure. Let me start by giving you some context on the company. Atico has a clear mandate to become a mid-tier producer in the copper and gold space. We look for high-grade, high-margin assets in Latin America. One of the criteria we used when we're looking for assets is that they will need to have exploration upside, exploration potential. That's key for us. And following on that criteria, we have two assets. We have El Roble mine in Colombia. It's a high-grade copper and gold VMS that has been in production for over 30 years. And we have La Plata project in Ecuador. It's a high-grade VMS as well. It's in a development stage. Now, the interesting thing about these two assets is that they're both surrounded by, both projects are surrounded by a large land package that we control. We think it's very prospective for exploration. So that's an initial view and context of what we are as a company, what we're trying to achieve, how we are trying to achieve it, and where are we right now in terms of progressing towards our objective.
Thank you. Now, the El Roble mine was a mining operation, a functioning mine. You bought that several years ago. And since then, you've spent a lot of time and effort and investment to upgrade and optimize the mine. And what have you done there? And is that process finished now?
Sure. So let me start by saying that El Roble mine, when we got there, was closing down. It had a life of mine of about 6 months. So it was preparing to shut down the operation. It was pretty much an artisanal mine at that time. We came in, we had a success discovering additional resources. And on the back of that, we took over in late 2013. And we spent about 3 years transforming the operation from an artisanal mine into what is now a 900 ton per day operation with very high standards. That's free cash flowing, it's generating significant free cash for the company and still has a lot of exploration potential. Now, whether we have finished with the transformation of the operation or not, I'll say that's an ever-going process. As we find more resources, we continue to increase the scale, the size of the operation. We continue that path towards improving the efficiency of the operation. As I mentioned, we have found 2.8 million tons of ore since we started exploring at El Roble. The geological information we have indicates that there's still more to be found, most likely. At depth, we are following the mineralization at depth. And beyond that, in the large land package that we control surrounding El Roble mine, over 6,000 hectares, we believe there's potential to find other VMSs. We have 15 targets located, of which we have drilled only 5. So we have 10 targets still to drill. They look very interesting, all of them, and we're hoping that at least one of them will be another VMS deposit that will form a cluster along El Roble mine. Now, we're doing all of that exploration, self-funding it from El Roble mine. And we're also using the funds to develop the La Plata project, which we will talk about in just a second. But El Roble mine is at the stage where we have 4 years of life of mine. So we're not looking to expand the mine more right now, the capacity of the mill right now. We are very much focused on new discoveries, both at the mine, at the large land package surrounding the operation. On the back of those discoveries, of course, when we're successful finding more resources, then it will justify increasing again the scale and the size of the mill. So that's the plan at El Roble. We believe there's ample opportunity still, again, at the mine and the targets that we have beyond the mine. And in the next years, the next 2 or 3 years, we are going to be drill testing all 10 targets that we have left. And again, we're hoping that will allow us to continue increasing the capacity of the operation as we're successful with exploration.
Okay, so El Roble is a VMS deposit, which means volcanic massive sulfides, and they tend to occur in sort of lenses. So you've been successful finding many more lenses underneath the current mine, and you say you've got sort of 10 more targets to drill to find sort of new lenses on the regional land package you have. Is that correct? Yeah.
That is correct. VMSs will tend to occur in clusters or lenses, if you will. We're mining one of those. The Roble mine is just one VMS lens that is still open at depth. So it has the opportunity to hold more resources. And then we have again, 10 targets that we believe might be a different lens, another lens of high-grade VMS mineralization.
Okay, so you acquired the El Roble mine. You've spent a number of years optimizing things there, increasing the production. You've got that into a good state. And then last year you acquired the La Plata VMS project in Ecuador. How did that fit into the overall company strategy? And what are your sort of plans or ideas to take that project forward?
Well, I believe it fits nicely into the company's strategy and what we're trying to do, in the sense that La Plata is a high grade, in this case, a VMS, is a high grade mineralization deposit with exploration potential. So very similar to a Roble setting. If you will, now we have doubled the opportunity to increase scale for the company, finding new resources, both at El Roble and now at La Plata. So the idea is to leverage the 1.8 million tons of 4.1 grams per ton of gold and 3.3% copper that La Plata deposit has currently, and turn that into an operating mine and use the cash flows generated by that operation alongside El Roble. Now we will have two mines running and generating cash flow once La Plata is up and running, and leverage that to then aggressively explore both properties, continue exploring El Roble and aggressively explore La Plata. We believe that in 2 years, we can have a fully permitted project and a bankable feasibility study to go along that and to start construction of La Plata.
Okay, so La Plata, you're still doing the exploration and some of the economic studies that you need to be able to make a production decision there. Well, what do you think?
So right now,
what do you think its potential is, sort of compared to El Roble? Will it be similar, bigger, smaller? What is it looking like?
It's hard to tell right now, but we have very high hopes in terms of the potential of La Plata. It looks very prospective. Right now, we are drilling the known mineralization, both infilling to migrate inferred resources into measured and indicated, so far with very interesting results. We're also going to be exploring alongside the known mineralization to find low-hanging fruit, if you will, of expansion along strike and a depth of the known mineralization. And that will be the base of the resource and reserve study to go along the feasibility study. So in the next 12 months or so, we're going to be focused mainly on the known deposit, the known La Plata deposit. Then after that, we'll start migrating to exploration drilling on the larger land package, where we believe there's a lot of opportunities still.
Thank you. A key mineral in both projects is copper, and so far this year the copper price has been it's been up, it's been down. It now seems to be sort of rising again. How difficult is it to sort of factor sort of copper price into the plans and the development plans of the company, and what you'd like to do and when you'd like to sort of make investments?
So, in terms of how the copper price affects us, it certainly has an impact on the economics of the operating mine for sure. But having said that, last year in 2019, we had a cash cost of $1.24 per pound of copper net of byproducts, and the all-in sustaining cash cost was $1.81 per pound of copper net of byproducts. So even at that $2.40, $2.50 per pound of copper, we still have a very nice margin that will allow us to continue progressing on our plans, both at El Roble and La Plata. Now, La Plata has a lot more gold in it. The gold component is about half the value of the ore, while La del Roble is right now is about 35%. Together, I'll say that as a company, about 40% of our revenues will come from gold once La Plata is operating. So that gives you a sense how we're going to be diversified between copper and gold. And that makes for a very nice natural leverage of exposure to metal prices, as copper and gold will usually tend to go in opposite directions.
Yeah, that's a very interesting situation. You've got that sort of natural hedge there. Now, the metals prices aren't the only thing that's impacted things this year. Obviously, we're in the midst of the sort of COVID-19 virus pandemic, and both Colombia and Ecuador have been, shut down their international airports and things of that nature. There have been quite the government measures to contain the virus spread have been sort of pretty aggressive, let's say. To what extent has that impacted your ability to sort of work and explore and advance both projects?
So let's start with El Roble. El Roble has not stopped operations, has continued producing since the start of the sanitary crisis in Colombia, but at a reduced pace. We're operating with about 60% of the usual staff currently. And at the start of the crisis, we were operating at a little bit less than 50% of the usual manpower on site. So it has been difficult. On top of that, we implemented a very rigorous COVID-19 protocol. So operating under those conditions has had many challenges for us. I'm very grateful for the team on the ground that they have been able to continue production at a normal rate, a normal pace throughout this whole situation. But other aspects of the operation has been delayed or halted. Exploration has been affected. We had 3 rigs. One of those rigs continued drilling. The other 2 stopped momentarily. Now we have 2 rigs up and running, and we expect a 3rd rig will come online again soon. Some of our projects at El Roble have been also delayed until later in the year, so there has been some impact. We have not felt it at the production level, but other aspects of the operation for sure has been impacted.
And do you think you'll be able to sort of catch up on some of those things as and when you're able to work sort of freely?
Yes, we certainly think we're going to be able to do that. Before the end of the year, we're going to start activating 100% of all the initiatives that we delayed because of this crisis.
Okay. Well, that's sort of final question for you, Fernando. And in terms of the sort of future growth of the company, you mentioned gold's a significant part of your revenue at the moment. Are you going to look to grow more on the sort of copper direction or the gold direction, or will that ultimately depend on what opportunities you see out there?
I guess it depends on the opportunities we see out there. Gold is in favor right now, obviously, but we are very bullish on copper on the mid and long term, for sure. So I think it will be smart to start working now on copper assets that might be worth significantly more once copper is hot. So we're just looking for good opportunities. Again, high grade, high margin with significant exploration potential, just as El Roble and La Plata. As we are finding those, we're paying attention in the market and see what's out there. If we're finding those opportunities, we're trying to act on them. We have constraints based on cash constraints and the size of our balance sheet constraints us as well. But for very nice projects, we believe there are ways to make it work. So where we can participate in those assets. So we continue to look for opportunities. Now, having said that, our focus right now is, of course, developing La Plata and finding new resources at El Roble. We believe that's the cheapest growth we can provide our shareholders. And we believe discovering any of those two assets will immediately give us a very material, a very significant re-rating of the share price.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for the update this morning, Fernando. I wish you all the best with all those plans. Look forward to hearing more about them in the future.
Thank you very much, Paul. Happy to be here again once we have an update for your audience.